It's time for another edition of PRose with Vikki, Locke, and Cyndee Woolley from C2 Communications. It's time for another edition of PRose with Vikki, Locke, and Cyndee Woolley from C2 Communications.
Having some technical problems there.
I figured we're so fabulous we needed two introductions, my friend. So cheers.
Cheers to PRose, where we talk about books while drinking. And everybody's going to think we've been drinking for a long time, so let's let them think that, okay?
We'll have fun with it.
We've got a fabulous author that's going to join us in a few minutes. Wonder what she's sipping today. Mm-hmm. I'm Vikki Locke, and I'm drinking a red Cyndee today. It's my go-to. It's called Prisoner. It is a blend, but it drinks like a cab. It is absolutely delicious. So what are you drinking?
Today I have Clearwater Cove Sauvignon Blanc. It's my my choice for clear or for whites. Sauvignon Blanc, anything from New Zealand is perfect for me. So I love it.
Something light and fresh.
Light and fresh to talk about love. I think we've got love on the agenda today, don't we?
We're going to talk all about relationships. And before we get Dina on, I've got to tell you something that I just read. For all of the single ladies out there, I just read a story that says a lot of couples today, modern brides and grooms, are saying goodbye to the engagement ring and hello to the engagement. Are you ready? The engagement watch.
Eesh.
And they say the number one watch is the Cartier, I think it's called the Love Watch. It retails for $12 grand. And they're saying that a lot of times these couples know that 50% of marriages fail. So they're thinking, will I get my money back on the engagement ring? Probably not. But on that Rolex or the Cartier, the value will increase.
Oh my goodness.
I also read it had something to do with the pandemic, that couples are now realizing that time is everything and you don't know how much time you have in life. But anyway, you being the single woman right now, what do you think? Engagement watch or engagement diamond ring?
I would definitely go for the diamond. I think there's something classic and something heartfelt there. And I want that lasting token. It's not meant to be a plan for a breakup. Like, oh, it's going to keep its value. It's supposed to be a token of love. But
says the divorced woman who's also an author, who's my partner now. But okay, you want the diamonds, you go for the diamonds.
Yeah, but I will still take the watch. I mean, as long as I don't have to get married for it, maybe I could just be an influencer.
And they say
Cardi B watch
that you could get him a watch too, or the couple, whoever that they might be, so you could have matching watches, so people will know that you're both off the market.
I think bracelets. I read something about bracelets, so that it was like an equalizer too, that they've got the same one. I don't know. Love's changing, right?
Yes, all the time. And with that, let's bring in our guest today. She is not only an author, she's a life coach. She's an expert on relationships. She's a former nurse, so that makes her pretty knowledgeable about the heart, both inside and out. And her latest book is called Love Strong, Change Your Narrative, Change Your Life, and Take Your Power Back. Welcome, Dina Bable. And we want to find out what you're drinking, girl. Are you drinking with us today?
My God, I'm drinking water. How boring. Okay. I didn't know I should put the alcohol in there, but let me tell you, I do have to talk about the watch thing for a second.
Yes,
sure.
Ma'am.
I'm from Charleston, and the old wives' tale there is if you give someone a watch, you're putting a time limit on your relationship.
Mm-hmm.
But you do not give a watch. And I'm going to tell you, in the past, I have given a watch, and I'm no longer with him.
So there you go.
Some truth to it. Could be some truth.
Okay, so you'd be for the diamond then.
Always diamond. Always.
Okay. Diamond. Big old diamond.
Big old diamond.
Well, being an author, what is the last book that you read that made you ugly cry, other than anything you've written yourself? What's another author's book that you read that
I cried laughing at Matthew McConaughey's book. He actually, you have to listen to it in Audible. He reads it. And it's like a memoir-esque book. And it's about the way he's flipped all the painful points in his life into something positive. It is a must listen, not read, listen.
Really?
Yeah, he's all right, you know, and he's cool,
Right.
demeanor, and he's intelligent. He's interesting, and he had a pretty traumatic childhood, but the narrative he's told himself and the way he's flipped it is amazing. It's something that everybody could do. But
Isn't he going to run for governor or something?
yeah, and he should. I mean, if you listen to how he takes pain and turns it into power, which is a big mantra for me, and he's cool and hot all at the same time. So, I mean, I have 10 books going at one time, but yeah, that one just came to mind.
Okay.
Oh, his drawl in that book is fantastic. It just puts you to sleep at night.
So I'm the only one that hasn't read it? Okay, or listen. Can't read it. I have to listen.
Don't. You got to listen to it. Believe me, you'll do yourself a big favor.
Okay. So what is a great beach read? Did you have a good beach read last year in 2020?
Yeah, I read, God, there's so many books. I like anything that memoirs and different stuff like that. I like nonfiction, obviously, and fiction, but I read a book called, it was by, God, what is her name? She was married. Her name was Linda Thompson. Okay. And she was married to a big time music producer and also dated Elvis. And it sounds insane, but she helped write music for Whitney Houston. She has the most interesting book. Oh, and she was married to Bruce Jenner. So her whole story, I know. And she's got this sweet voice, and she's like a lyricist. So some of her words could be a little corny, but the story itself is so rich and so interesting with music. And you know, you listen to or read a book like that and you think about what an amazing life this woman has had. And she really is always looking for love and still believes in the great love. Oh, and her son is Brody Jenner, who is beautiful.
All the Jenners and all the Kardashians are beautiful.
Yeah. So lots of books. I mean, I could go on and on about books. I have a million.
You're all about love then, obviously.
All about love.
And do you drink when you're writing? Like when you wrote this book, or what inspires you when you write?
You know what? I think it's like how people talk about meditation and stuff. When I was little, my mom, anytime I had an issue with anything, she would tell me to write about it. And so I think I started emoting through words, and that's how I would process information. And she also had this real thick book about horoscopes. I don't know if y'all remember these books. They're like this thick, and you can open it up and it says, if you're a Leo and he's a Taurus, what your relationship will be and how it will turn out. So I was like the resident matchmaker. You know, if a girlfriend of mine met someone, I'd be like, hold on, let me, this will not work. But I was always really enthralled with it. I'm a people person. I think I'm fairly intuitive, and I just like to see how the dynamic and how things work, and what do we need to do to get happy and find what we're looking for in this lifetime?
Mm-hmm.
Well, as somebody who lived in Atlanta, and you're there now, I had so many girlfriends, I'm sure you do too, Dina, that just could not find the right guy.
It's like it used to be one girl for 10 guys.
Is it still?
I don't know. It's probably more than that, but you're like stepping all over each other, and the women are like 20s and the guy's like a 3.5, and you're like, okay, it's got a job. Come get me. I mean, I think that one of the reasons, it's funny you bring that up, that I wrote this book, is I went through a pretty major breakup, like we all do, in my 20s, that was so memorable that it really kind of changed the trajectory of my life. Mm-hmm. And I think we all have those, right? The men or women that are here to teach us a lesson. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times that involves a heartbreak or some kind of change in who you are, where you say, okay, all the tools I have not been working with this one particular situation. And I turned myself inside out trying to figure it out. It wasn't unhealthy. It was just the timing was off. I was unhealthy. But I think that I was so like, what is going on? And it triggered a lot of stuff for me that I probably had needed to look at to evolve. And I really wanted to write this book about what is the narrative we tell ourselves and what do we take with us from our parents? Because, you know, our love story and what we look for is ingrained in us based on a lot of history. You know, what brought our parents together? Did they meet in college? Did someone get pregnant? Was there an issue? You know, people got married much differently. I'm 50 when my mom was younger, right? For different reasons. What narrative did they bring into the marriage or the relationship? And then you came along. And then what were you told verbally or non-verbally? And what do you learn from that? And then you take that, obviously, with things that happen in the world. And as you grow and experience life, you have, you know, issues and triggers and things that happen because we have an inner conflict in us, which is what is it that we fear and what is it that we ultimately want, right? Mm-hmm. And what drives us is our core fear. What are we afraid of? And then what we're always trying to make happen is what are we striving for? What's our core want inside of us of what do we want? And I think that in writing Love Strong, I really wanted to guide, you know, like, okay, I've been through this major breakup, or I haven't found the person I want. Why? What am I doing wrong? Am I doing anything wrong? Because I think, you know, women are great to each other, right? Like we go through a breakup and they're like, oh, he's terrible. You know, he's this, he's that. We're just always trying to pump each other up. But sometimes we are the problem. You know, sometimes we're in our own way. And it doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with us. It just means that we might need to change the way we think and what we're doing and what we're putting out there to get what we want.
So what was the aha moment for you after that breakup and as you were processing that you just said, okay, here's my narrative and flip. This is that moment.
God. I was in my 20s, so I did some dumb stuff. I was too needy. I remember a specific moment where I just did not want to go out or do anything. I was just pining over this dude. And, you know, I was supposed to be the cool girl who had it all together, and I was a wreck. And I was walking with a girlfriend of mine, you know, with my hair on the side of my head and like not having it together. And she was like, have you ever thought about therapy? And I thought, how dare you? I don't need therapy. I'm great, right? But it stung. And when someone says, have you ever thought about therapy, especially in your 20s or early 30s, that's saying, hey, you might be the problem. And the reality is I needed some therapy. But the other thing is the fear that I had, what I'm always trying to avoid at that point in my life was abandonment. You know, like, is this person going to abandon me, and can I abandon them first? So I was always choosing men that I could walk away from. And when I chose the guy that could walk away from me. And it really taught me that I don't have it near as together as I thought. And I think if I really dig down into that, the core want is for someone to love me and for who I am, which is, you know, we all have that, right? Mm-hmm. I think that I didn't know who I was. And, you know, as a partner, I knew what I wanted, supposedly, but I didn't know how to be the partner that I should be. Mm. Mm-hmm, Cyndee, it's deep.
So are women today getting your power back? Since I'm married and I'm happily married, but I remember meeting guys when I was on the radio and I was trying to date, and they were intimidated by that fact, and I had a hard time finding dates.
You know, it's a weird place, I think. I'm not a man, so I can't speak for men, but I do have some men in my life. And I think that it's a hard place for men these days. Like, I mean, I'm only speaking from my vantage point, but, you know, we're taking charge and doing all these things. And, you know, I think sometimes who we are in a relationship, I'll speak for myself, when you're at work or you're in corporate America or you're doing your thing and you're however that looks, and you're taking control. And then you come home and you're like, okay, let me turn the control off, and now let me be, the partner that lets them jump in. And, there's a lot of mixed roles, I think. And the more you know about who you are and what you need, I think the easier it is to say no thank you to someone and not drag them down a hole with you, but to say, this is what I need. And if you're not able to give it to me, that's fine. It doesn't mean anything, but this is what I need in a partner, and this is what I'm looking for. Because, women are really good at saying, I got my list. He's got to be 6'5". He needs to have X amount of money. He's got to look this way. I don't like this. I don't like that. Get rid of all that and look at the core trait. What do you want the person to be? Is it that you want acceptance? Maybe you're loud and obnoxious and you like to dance on tables at weddings, right? Is he going to let you dance on the table? Is he going to accept you? Maybe it's a trust issue where you grew up not, watching your parents not trust each other. So trust is important to you. So, it could be he needs to follow through. I like people that do and say what they say and do what they say and say they're going to do. And I think that could be as basic as, I'll pick you up at 6 o'clock. They're always late. Do you flip out on them, or do you say, look, this is important to me, and here's the reason why? But core traits are important. Who are they as a person? The rest of that stuff goes away. I mean, you got to be attracted, but when it's all said and done, if the core of the person is what you are really, truly needing and looking for, it'll work itself out.
Mm-hmm.
Is this something that's good for teenagers, young 20-somethings, people getting out of college, for the same for widows or widowers? Is it all the same game?
Yeah, I think any woman or man that is not getting the love they want should read this book or figure out why they're not getting it, in however form or fashion that is. And, a lot of this is understanding like your love story, right? Like what you've grown to know, the people you've chosen and why, what's your dad type, right? Like, for an example, let's say your father was a very cautious father, right? Then you may, as a woman, be a little more dependent, scared to take risks. So you might just settle with the nice little banker you met on the first day, right? So like, you have to think about, what did I see as love, and what does that look like to me? What did my parents see as love? Why have I gotten in relationships and broken up? Is there a stream there? Is there a situation where it continues happening? Not he cheated on me or she cheated on me. I mean, like, did we have the same type of arguments? Am I hearing the same thing from different people, right? Or am I taking risk, or am I not taking risk? I think you have to look at what your mom was like. I think you have to look at your conflict style. In relationships, conflicts are always about resolution, right? If you break, I could look at any person, Vikki, you, Cyndee, whoever, and say, what's the last argument you got in with your husband? How quickly did you figure out the resolution? What happened? And I can tell you if it's going to work, right? Because the quicker
they need you on The Bachelor and The Bachelorette, apparently.
yes,
Consultant.
heyday in there. But you got to figure out, how quick can you get to resolution? And, there's different types in the book about what type of conflict style you have. Are you a avoider? Do you balance people? Do you accommodate? Do you battle? Some battlers are like always screaming and yelling and I want to win no matter what. And then you attract an avoider, right? Like, I'll just do whatever they say. But the sneaky thing about avoiders are, they're not just passive, they're also aggressive, right? Because nobody's passive and not aggressive. And so it's like, you got to really understand who you're in that relationship with and what that looks like.
Now, what do you think the impact of our blended and reblended families are in the latest generations, where families are going through multiple divorces and children have multiple sets of siblings?
Yeah, it's really interesting question. I've actually worked with some people like this. You know, there's a statistic that says that if you blend a family and the child is 3 years old or older, that the stepfather, mother is not going to be able to be an authoritative figure for that child, right?
Interesting.
You got to look at what are you bringing in and what are you expecting from the spouse and what is the spouse expecting, because you're bringing in your known, learned ideals about parenting, right? And let me tell you, parenting is like, you know, a buzz killer, right? Because it's exhausting. I don't know how anybody makes it through marriage with kids. I mean, it is exhausting because, you know, there's a show on Showtime called Couples Therapy, and the couples therapist is like, I have the two people in therapy, and then I have their parents. So there's 6 people on the couch. And it really is like that. So I think you got to look at, you know, when you're blended in families, what are we going to do and how is this going to look? And I think you got to think about, how is this person going to play a part in my kids' lives, or are they? And you got to set up some boundaries. What'll work? What will not work? What are your kids comfortable with? That takes a lot of maturity, emotional maturity, to figure this out. I'm not saying you can't do it. I think people do it wonderfully all the time. But the thing is we're all living and changing and growing, and our journeys are all different. And divorce is pretty real. You know, and there's a lot of guilt that goes with that. But again, we're bounced back up and we're looking for love.
That's right. Looking for that Rolex, that Cartier.
That Cartier.
Yes.
Or the big diamond. We've gotten that signify like the fantasy and the love and all the things that you think you're supposed to be getting. I think about when I was getting engaged, I was like, I want this certain ring, and it's got to be this, and that. You know, I could care. That's not what marriage is all about. Marriage is about, if you're sick, you know, are they going to be sitting there with you? Marriage is about, you know, I had an issue with my mom or a girlfriend. Can you sit here and deal with this with me? Marriage is about, do you sit on the beach together and laugh at all the same stuff? You know, who's your person? That's what it is. I think we get these mixed ideals, like, they got to throw us against a wall, and they got to be our best friend. And that's a lot to put on one person.
That's so much pressure. You know, since you're an Audible fan, I'll tell you, there's a book called Love Without Sex.
Mm-hmm.
Which, when I saw the title, I was like, eek. And then, you know, I listened to it, and it's actually about asexuality and romantic friendships and this whole new definition of love. And I thought, you know, this is something that's impacting, you know, my daughter's generation. And I listened to it just to understand where people are coming from. And asexuality, polyamory, binary, I never would have understood those things before, but ultimately it was just shattering these myths of, you know, your princess and your white horse.
Yeah.
You know,
love is love. That's the whole ideal. But I think that you bring up a good point, because I think, you know, if you bring in the nurse aspect of Miss Dina, like your serotonin, your dopamine, all these things that come in during, you know, the phases of love, right? When you get to the second, third year with someone, the intimacy is a lot deeper. But the serotonin highs and lows of, oh, he's so great, I can't wait to smell him. You know, now you're like, he stinks today, but you know what? God love him. We ate some popcorn and we had the best time laughing, right? But I think the reality is, I mean, if you look at Sarah Blakely and you follow her Instagram, she makes fun of Jesse all the time and says, God love him. But I mean, that's their dynamic, and that's fun, right? And I think that you have to look at what works for you. Does not work for your best friend or your neighbor. And when we start comparing and competing, you got to watch it. You also have to keep your relationship a small bit private. And I'll tell you, if you're around people that aren't cheerleading for you in your relationship, that's not the people you want to talk to about it.
mm-hmm.
It's hard enough. You need your people. You know, you don't need someone to say, don't put up with that, get rid of him. Like, maybe you don't want to get rid of them. You know, like, what is it that you need? And you got to have a really good, wise counsel around you. Who is going to cheerlead for you in your relationship? Because you're going to need it.
I was going to ask you, social media has done to relationships?
Oh my God. I think not just social media, I think texting. I mean, there's so many things you don't understand. And nowadays, everybody's got ADD, right? I mean,
Yeah.
or do they really? I mean, if you watch TV, the ticker's going 5 different ways. You got a phone ringing. I mean, we've made ourselves where our attention is so small. And what makes a relationship work is connectivity. And if you can't connect and you're sitting beside each other on your phone, or you're too busy climbing the ladder or whatever, you're not giving back to that person. And I think what I see in a lot of relationships that fail is the baggage accumulates and you just don't want to deal with it. So you just go find someone else and you start accumulating the new baggage, right? But the problems are all going to be there until you get real sure about what the narrative is in your head, what you're looking for, and what means the most to you to make you feel the core need that you're looking for is taken care of.
Would this book be a good gift to someone, say, that you thought maybe they were in a bad relationship, but they didn't know it, and maybe there were some issues, maybe some violent tempers, whatever, but they were in denial? Would this be a book that you could say, why don't you read this? Would that help them to see it?
I think that this book is pretty, right? It's pink. I look like the country singer on front. Like, it's a pretty book, but there's a lot of really good nuts and bolts in here, right? So I think you could give it as a gift. You got to think about intention behind it, Vikki, right? Like, what are they going to think your intention is? Oh, I had this great girl on my show. I bought a couple of her books, have one. Versus like, hey, I'm a little concerned about you. Here you go. I mean, I think you got to look at it, but usually there's a deeper thought to that. When I was writing the Fatherless Daughter Project, my book before that, when I was writing the relationship chapter, it literally just ran out of me. Like it was like a moving train and I could not stop it. Mm-hmm. And I think for me, there's always a core fear in there, right? And I wanted to write the relationship side because 1 in 3 women are fatherless. We have Father's Day coming up. And when I say fatherless, I mean 1 in 3 women do not have an emotional connection to their father. It could be death, divorce, abandonment, addiction. It could be a million reasons why. But when you look at that, and that's kind of a subject a lot of people don't talk about anymore, or will not talk about in the forefront. It's not sexy to be like, hey, I'm fatherless, right? But I think the reality is if you don't have these core needs and things taken care of in your childhood, you're going to take some of this with you. And the big key thing for a fatherless daughter is isolating themselves when they don't feel heard or seen to go work on themselves. And when you talk about the friend or someone you might be talking about, she's having a core fear, and it could be stay with someone at all costs. Don't be alone. So she's going to stay, like it could be, we learn a lot by nonverbal cues. And if our parents are like, hey, let's say the mom's like, I can't make it on my own financially, so I'm going to stay in a mediocre or not great marriage. You've taught your child, you can't do it on your own, stay. Whereas if you get out and leave at the first second of a problem, you're teaching them to run, right? But it's what we see. And I think that a lot of women and men, we all have some pain. But it's not a big deal once we just see what it is and look under the hood and say, here's a couple of things that I'm carrying with me. And an author friend of mine said one time, when you're having a problem in a relationship, ask yourself, is your inner child in the back seat or the front seat? If you're putting her in the front seat and you're letting her drive with you and handle everything with you, she's in control. If you say, look, girl, you need to jump in the back seat or in the trunk, I don't need you, I got it. That's a different story. You just got to look at what you're carrying with you. And that's a long answer, but I got a lot of thoughts going through my head.
Well, how about a happy note? What would be your ideal date? and where are you going after the pandemic? Since
My
everything-
Yeah, my ideal date is anybody that listens to me. I'm kidding. My ideal date would be like somewhere, where you're like Tulum or somewhere cool, right? Where you're maybe doing a little bit of work on yourself, you're relaxing, you're doing a lot of taking care of yourself. And I think good music, always good conversation, and a beach is where I want to be. And a cocktail. Yes,
Of course.
anywhere I can connect. If it's at Chick-fil-A, I'll take it.
I love it. I love it.
Everybody, where you can get your books.
Yeah, sure. You can get it at anywhere books are sold. Amazon, Barnes & Noble, anywhere. In fact, I was at Barnes & Noble the other day in Buckhead, and my son was with me, who's never with me, and we were going to get books for him, and he takes off running down the hallway, and I'm like, where are you going? He goes, to get your book. And I thought, God, I hope they have copies in there, right? So he runs up, and we find the book. And she goes, oh my God, can you do some impromptu signing? So I was signing a bunch of books in there, which is really cool because my son knows I'm an author, but they don't know, right? And so it's really cool to let him see it. But anywhere you'd buy a book, you can get Love Strong. Just in time. Yeah.
Strong. I
Get
love
it together.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank
you. Flew by. Next week, we've got another fantastic author on Prose, New York Times bestselling author Emily Giffen. She's going to talk about her latest, The Lies That Bind. So, Dina, thanks so much for joining us. And cheers to you and Love Strong.
Thank you. Cheers, ladies. I enjoyed it.
Cheers.
Join us next week for another edition of Prose with Vikki, Locke, and Cyndee Woolley from C2 Communications.